A few miles northwest of Knoxville is a town that was never supposed to exist. It was a secret city named Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The town is 10 miles long and 2 miles wide, completely surrounded by a barbed razor wire fence. In 1942, the government bought out all the farmers that lived there, and the area was flooded with engineers. Out of the 75,000 people who worked there, only 1% actually knew what was going on. At the time, the city took 1/5 of the entire electricity of the United States. This was part of the Manhattan Project, the secret government program to build the world's first atomic bomb. At one of the public sites, there's the Historical Park, which has a museum of science and energy. Lots of cool stuff here. Most interestingly, though, this is where we're going to get our instructions for building the bomb. Yeah! The original nuclear bomb works by splitting atoms. Then it sets off a concordance of other splits. This releases all the energy, which you can figure out due to the famous equation E equals mc squared. When the isotopes split, the leftover particles disappear, being converted into large amounts of energy. The best atom for this is uranium. Now, uranium is common, but it's hard to get. And on top of that, only a fraction of the uranium you get is in the usable type, and that's called the isotope 232. See, elements have a common formation, but sometimes they're found with extra or less neutrons. These rare versions are called isotopes. The common elements are mostly stable and don't react well. We found that a rare version of uranium, U-235, is pretty good for exploding. Now, how rare is that? About 1 in 140 atoms of uranium is the exploding kind. And this is what keeps people from making nukes all the time. Oh, and by the way, this is just for the first atomic bomb, Little Boy. There are several ways to make a big explosion. Oak Ridge City here was all about getting that rare uranium, U-235. There are two main sites to the facility here that I'll talk about. We've got the X-10 graphite reactor and the Y-2 electromagnetic separation facility. That sounds like a lot of complicated stuff. The X-10 graphite reactor was the first reactor built after the successful experimentation in University of Chicago, I believe it was. It uses a lattice of graphite blocks and uranium rods. It was Fermi who proved that a nuclear chain reaction could even be controlled. Consider this the proof of concept testing facility. Now, the Y-12 plant in Oak Ridge used the electromagnetic separation method developed by, I think it was Ernest Lawrence at Berkeley? I think it was Berkeley? Anyway, to separate the uranium isotopes. This method was the most developed way to produce the fission material at the start of the Manhattan Project. Now, there's a difference between fusion and fission, and they sound similar, so it's easy to get confused. Fusion is atoms coming together, being fused, and fission is atoms separating. That's what makes the atomic bomb in this scenario. Separating the isotopes is pretty easy to explain. The isotopes that we need are smaller than the normal atom. The lighter isotope travels quicker, so they have all the atoms basically race down long pipes, and they collect the winners. Those were the uranium-235s. Later on, methods came to be created to separate the uranium that's more effective in different things, but for the first part, they used the electromagnetic separation. Now, this gave you two piles of uranium. They gave you a 95% pile of the isotope U-235, and this is called enriched uranium. What's left after that is depleted uranium. For the first bomb, Little Boy, they shot a bullet of uranium into another piece of uranium. This set off the reaction that we've all come to know and love watching in movies. My first degree path in college was actually theoretical physics, so this sort of stuff is actually pretty interesting to me. At the museum here, there's also this cool kids science center area where you can see all sorts of gadgets and other shiny things. While most of the federal projects have been reduced at Oak Ridge, the area's biggest economic driver is still federal research. Oak Ridge still has a large national library under the DOE, the Department of Energy. And in fact, it's one of the largest national laboratories in the system, just by its sheer size and budget. It's home to several of the world's top supercomputers, including the world's fifth most powerful supercomputer, Titan, which is primarily used in molecular scale physics, and I think it also does some climate models. The specific sites of some of the refineries that made U-235 for the bombs have been decommissioned and demolished. If I recall correctly, they're now home to some office spaces for different tech companies and things like that. The whole Oak Ridge city is pretty fascinating to me. If you've ever seen the sci-fi TV show called Eureka, it reminds me a lot of that. It's unknown from the outside, but inside, technology is years ahead. That show was starring Colin Ferguson, for whom several years I thought was Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. And hey, if anybody knows of any secret cities recruiting an aspiring polymath who drives around the country in a van, let me know. So as you can see, making a nuclear bomb in your van is pretty simple. Just get yourself some uranium-235 isotopes, and you're halfway there. I stayed 2 nights with my aunt and uncle in Tennessee, and now it's time to head off into the sunset. Who knows where I'm headed next? Well, anyone that's added me on Instagram knows because I've already posted some pictures. Anyway, it's off to the west. For Washington is not a place to live in. The rents are too high, the food is bad, the dust is disgusting, and the morals are deplorable. Go west, young man. Go west, and grow up with the country. There is health in the country, and room away from our crowds of idlers and imbeciles. That, I said, is very frank advice, but it's easier medicine given than taken. It's a wide country, but I do not know just where to go. It's time to manifest my destiny. You get it? That's a pun.